All right. And so welcome to our first little quick chat in the morning is what we're hoping to do, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. Take a look at some things that are happening on our campus to help our students and our families be a little bit more successful working together. So I'm brought with us today Brittany Broswell. She's a therapist on our campus. She's been with us for about a year. We've been thrilled to have her, a real asset to the campus. And she's going to talk just a little bit about anxiety, especially with like middle school ages. And on occasion, as always, I'll interrupt her and ask questions of my own. We encourage you to contact us. I'll be following up with a link on this for any questions you might have. And if you have topics you'd like us to cover in the future, we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to let you take it away, Brittany.
Hi, everybody. So as Leroy, Mr. Jackson said, I'm a school therapist. I'm actually an associate marriage and family therapist here on site 5 days a week, working with students. And so today we're going to be talking about anxiety, which we all know most of our students are experiencing, nationwide, worldwide. And so we're just going to take a deeper look and discuss what's going on with students specifically at the middle school level. And so here we go. So for today, we're going to gain an understanding of what anxiety is, what are the related symptoms, and then we're going to talk about treatment and some coping mechanisms that you can use at home with your child. So anxiety, we're all aware of anxiety. Everyone experiences it. It's, it's healthy to experience some sort of anxiety. So anxiety is an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worry, and then we have physical changes that go through our body, such as sweating, headache, accelerated heart rate, fatigue, shortness of breath, and some students experience most in school. Sometimes they'll come out as like stomach ache or headaches, and that's when they start feeling and they don't know what's going on. So that's why we're here to teach them too what these symptoms are. And like I said earlier, some anxiety is normal. It's some worry is perfectly okay to have. Students experience it with tests. They have a little bit of test anxiety. Meeting new people. Sometimes students are shy and have a little bit of anxiety, and that's all normal. It's normal to experience all of that. And when we have anxiety, is our body's response of telling us whether it's like a dangerous situation or something that's unknown. So it's good to have that alertness. But it's also important to know when to reach out for help when you're experiencing anxiety and if it's in a normal range or not.
So this is where I interrupt you. You'll get used to this. So, I'm not a sports person, but I was a band person. And so it was always unusual to me because, we practice all the time. And yet before we do a concert or something like that, we would experience a little bit of anxiety, even though I'm with like 90 people on the stage,
right.
And so what we have found is sometimes is that little bit of anxiety actually, with the adrenaline going and all that stuff can help us perform a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it can be. There's a good type of anxiety, as long as we're aware of it and we know what's happening with it. And then there's some not so good anxiety. And I think that's something that's biological, gives us an edge sometimes, but prolonged anxiety with the things you're describing, like the heart rate, the sweating, the fatigue and all that stuff, that's not good. And so, right. So we'll be talking about that a little bit, right?
Yes.
Cool. All right.
Yes. And then so during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen and experienced heightened anxiety. A lot of academic stress of students of learning online and coming back to school and just readjusting So most of that is normal. You might have noticed in some of your children of, am I doing the test right? Am I studying long enough? Being in person and learning. So a lot of it is just adjustment that they're experiencing. Socializing with peers, since students were home and online and away from their friends for a period of time, they are, being reacquainted with learning, how to socialize again and, learning social skills. And so that could also cause a little bit of anxiety of, talking to people, meeting new people, carrying conversations. And then also a little bit of separation anxiety, which is due to being home for a lengthy period of time with family, and then having to separate from the parent or caregiver that they were with for a long period of time, and then adjusting to being away from them again while being at school all day. And so that's also something that's normal, but your child might be experiencing. So here we're going to talk about some anxiety disorders. So these are if it's recurrent. So these are where it's beyond the normal anxiety that they're experiencing of just, like, oh, I'm feeling a little like shy today, or I feel like I don't want to like go present in front of my class, or I'm having these thoughts about something, but it just happens occasionally. These are when it's recurrent, and this is where it starts affecting your daily life. So when it starts affecting your daily life, that's when it's starting to look at a disorder, so a diagnosis. So we have our most common one, which is generalized anxiety disorder, also known as GAD. So this is persistent excessive worry, where individuals find it difficult to control that worry. So it also is where you're overthinking, and you're overthinking the worst case scenarios all the time. It's when you're indecisive or of making a wrong decision, and that you can't stop thinking about it.
It's kind of like that worrying, and you can't get out of that loop. I'm like, I'm worried that I'm worrying too much, or I'm worrying about things that I may not necessarily have control over, especially with the social media. Depending on where the kids are looking, it can be fairly persistent. If they start liking things, the algorithms that these systems have actually, I think, are showing are creating possibly some anxiety, because it keeps feeding you whatever negative stuff that you're thinking. It gives you more of it, because you keep clicking on it. Like, I'm worried about global warming or whatever it is out there. I think you get into this cycle that you can't get out of.
Yes, exactly. And so that's when it's, you start to looking at it as, maybe this is something more than just my child worrying about something that's going on. And it's where it starts affecting their everyday life, where they can't do daily tasks because they can't stop thinking about it, or they feel like I can't go to school, or that's in the more severe cases. And then we have panic disorder. So that's frequent and unexpected panic attacks that trigger severe physical symptoms when there's no real danger or an apparent, cause. It's just some students are, experiencing panic attacks. So it's a little more severe, or it's not, classified by, there's like a medical condition or anything causing a panic attack. And it's also too important to realize that the anxieties can cause an anxiety attack, which is different from a panic attack. They're less severe. And so that's something to, be aware of as well, because sometimes people just get an anxiety attack where they kind of get like shortness of breath, and but that doesn't classify it as a panic attack. And then we have social anxiety. This is where it's the intense fear of being judged or rejected by a social group or performance setting. So this is when individuals will fear someone's going to notice they're sweating or blushing, or if they're in front of a group of people. It's different than the normal I'm shy and I can't speak in front of groups. This is where it starts affecting your daily life, where you avoid situations. You avoid coming to school, or you're like, you have a presentation and you don't come to class. So that's when it's important to start looking into social anxiety, if it's more of where they start avoiding situations. And it's not just the normal, like, I feel embarrassed talking in front of people. That's slightly different. So it's important
It's
to
slightly
know.
different than, like, I don't want to be next to my parents when I drop them off at school. I just want to go away from them.
Yes.
But the social anxiety, as I'm watching this here and I'm thinking about it a little bit, is again to go back to the social media, and there's a whole big study on shaping our reality for the purposes of presenting it and getting likes. And if you post a picture of something that you think is pretty cool, but you don't get a lot of likes, it is not uncommon for people to remove it and put something else up. And so even though I think it falls into this a little bit, because we do want to be liked, and when we're being judged and stuff like that, especially when we're in that social media world, I think the social anxiety is something that I think we're seeing more of with our kids. We get some stuff coming up from either negative comments or just a judginess out there, which is kind of real.
Right. Yeah. And that's an important lesson, at this age, to learn too, of the reality of social media and what's real and what is out there, what's edited, or and seeing how, I think the importance too is how, like you said, these likes, like how important it is to these students. Like they're basing their almost self-esteem too on what's being put out there in these social media likes, or like you said, reposting or something. So yeah, certainly affecting some social anxiety, where they, want to like reach out to other friends or avoid that, you said, fear of being judged and everything. So, it's just to also, for all of these, just to be aware, you're with your students, your children, you see them every day and you live with them, so you can check out what the symptoms are and notice. And for it to be considered a diagnosis for a disorder, that's more if it's recurrent. Generally, it's for several weeks, and that's when it becomes more of where they need either psychotherapy or medication, or just learning some coping mechanisms and strategies of what to do when put in a situation. So here we have some common treatments / coping tools that are available for you. You can practice them with your child. And so meeting basic needs. So sleep hygiene is so important for students. Eating, nutritious, nourishing meals. It's also important at this age. And so grounding techniques. I have a graphic here. You can see it's the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is an excellent grounding technique that adults and children can use at any time. They can even do this in the classroom with no one even knowing that they're doing this. And it's a practice that they can do to themselves. So it's 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. And then sometimes when we get to the taste part, I often tell students, okay, if it's something, you're in your class with your mask on, obviously, maybe you're not tasting something. So maybe say one positive thing about yourself to yourself.
Hold on a second, because this is kind of important, I think. So as you feel the possibility of anxiety coming on, these are the things that we can do to help us calm and recenter ourselves, I guess.
Yes.
Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. And so it's something that probably should be rehearsed. And so if and when you see a child who is getting to a point where they're getting at a heightened emotional state, you almost want to have a card on this, because I can't remember this myself, but if you practice it long enough, you probably should be able to, this will become natural, but it has to be practiced.
Certainly, yes, it
I'm
has to be
hearing.
practiced. And I think too, it's, like, okay, what is it? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then what are the 5? What's 4? What's the 3? What's the 2? What's the 1? And I have flyer where the wellness center is, open, and there's a poster of this in the room. And there's also flyers of this available for any students who would like to come in and take one. It's readily available for them too. And so they can practice. It's something you can practice with your child as well at home. Remind them if you're ever feeling that some anxiety where you're starting to feel uncomfortable, and doesn't necessarily mean that they have to get out of class, or because the goal is to learn to manage and cope with this. And usually a student will be able to find at least one technique that works for them, because there's several techniques out there. And it's most importantly, finding something that works for you. The grounding technique, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 might not work for everybody. Some it might be a great tool for. Some students can even take a couple of deep breaths. And these are all things you can do without anyone even noticing what you're doing. Doing a count breath. So you breathe in for 3 or 4 seconds, you hold it for 3 or 4 seconds and release it. And then you just repeat this several times. And this is all things you can do without anyone knowing. Something else that's important to do is positive self-statements. So this positive self-talk, and it's important to make them individual to your child. So something you can create together. Whether it's something that you start out with the day of, I'm happy, or I am beautiful, or something specific to your child. And so it's something they can easily remember. I'm smart, I'm intelligent. Calming visualization. So thinking of imagery for them that calms them, whether it's a scenery or animal, something that they can visualize. Talking to the anxiety. Anxiety are your thoughts. They're not your facts. So it's important to, maybe something you can work with your child together is talking to that anxiety or naming that anxiety. So say you want to name your anxiety Rex. You're like, you know what, Rex, not today. I know this is not the truth. These are just my thoughts. And this is something that can be coached and worked with, and you can do that together with your child. There's a worry jar or journal, writing out your anxiety, your anxious thoughts, getting that out on paper. Let's see, looking at evidence that supports the worry and evidence against the worry. Modeling confidence and calmness and talking to your child about your fears or their fears. I think it's important by modeling that they can see an adult do it. They're able to, maybe if you're practicing it, they can start picking up that practice as well.
I'm gonna bounce in on that one too,
Yeah.
because that modeling is something that reflecting back in time, I think having children understand that we as adults experience anxiety. It's important to know that we all do, but we don't usually talk about it as adults. Sometimes we bottle it up. And I tell my wife I'm going for a drive, and listen to my music really loud or something like that. So being able to model that, because sometimes we do these things in private, I think it may be really helpful, because these are adult or lifelong lessons to be learned, and how we're coping with it and discussing it openly and honestly. I think it's probably really key for our children to be successful.
Yeah, certainly. Yes, and like you said, for adults we all experience anxiety. It's a way of life. We're always going to have that. And it's just how you choose to manage it and cope with it. And so by modeling positive coping skills and the stuff you can do together with your child, So these are all available for you to use or practice. Structure and routines are important as well. Either going to bed at a specific time, coincides with the sleep hygiene, eating dinner at certain times, waking up at certain times on the weekends. Maybe that's important to us. Family time, all that's important. Having that structure. And then for treatments, we have therapy, psychotherapy, which is talk therapy. And one of the most common for anxiety is CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So that is where we have, our thoughts becomes feelings, becomes our behaviors. And so it's important to be able to look at our negative thoughts, challenge our negative thoughts, and then replace our thoughts with more realistic thoughts. So that's part of CBT, which is the most common practice for anxiety. And then there's also medication, which would be, provided under the care of a primary care physician or a psychiatrist. So those are some options as well. And then, like Mr. Jackson said earlier, I'm available here on site 5 days a week to, meet with students. So students are always welcome to come in and walk in. We do have a wellness center that they're more than welcome to come in. It's open at lunch. Me and our school counselor, Mrs. Kruger, split the time, and students are more than welcome to come in and talk about, anxiety or any other mental health related issues, social skills issues, or anything going on. They're always welcome to come in and talk as well.
Well, thank you so very much. And I think you have one more slide. Can you click on it? There you go. So,
yes, so we have some references. So we have a website. It's Anxiety and Depression Association of America. They have some great information on there regarding anxiety and depression. WorryWise Kids is an excellent website that also provides some information. I have on here the DSM-5, so that's the diagnosis manual for all of the mental health diagnosis. And then there's an excellent book. It's called Anxiety Relief for Kids. So I encourage parents to check it out. It has different activities, different situations that students can read through to overcome worry and fear. And I think most important that it's almost, because it has activities in it, it's almost kind of like a journal for them, and then they can go through it. And I've checked out this book this last year, and I think it's a great resource for students as well.
Excellent. And then I'll put in a plug for the Torrance Police Department. The City of Torrance has had a program for a number of years, and the title of it is one that I'd like to change, but it's called Juvenile Diversion. And they do have a series of programs for parents, and they also have counseling and therapy available. And I'll be putting a link in for that. It is a resource that is a really awesome one, unique to the City of Torrance and the community. I think it's underutilized, in part because the title's kind of off-putting. But the program itself is probably one of the most amazing things that the city has to offer for our community and our children. And so I will be posting a link on that. So with that, I thank you so very much for joining us, and thank you, Brittany, Mrs. Boswell, for walking us through this presentation. I think it's some useful information, and we'll put contact links for you and the parents, so they can connect with you if they feel that they are experiencing a little bit more than what they may consider normal. And so you're a good resource for helping parents, access other agencies, if you will. Yes. So with that, I think I'm gonna let you go. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.